Welcome to the live stream of consciousness. The live stream of consciousness is on a quest to unravel the mysteries of existence. Every episode, we ask the fundamental question, what is consciousness? Is consciousness merely a product of our brains, or does it connect us to something greater? Explore the very fabric of our thoughts. Don't miss a moment. Expand your awareness and tap into the boundless potential that resides within you. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness.
Yes, welcome. We continue to unravel the mysteries of the universe each week here, and I don't think we're getting anywhere. But that's all right, because we're exactly where we're supposed to be, and that is awesome. I see Ninja Kitty out there. What is up, my friend? And I see Hat Powser out there. What is up, Fractal Wonders, Ascending Fractal Wonders? I love that greeting that you've created there. So if you're not familiar, for those of you who might be stumbling into this moment, you have stumbled into the live stream of consciousness. That is this. It is Thursday. It is April 11th. I think it's like number 13 or 14th week of the year. We've slowed down time here on the live stream of consciousness, which is kind of cool. And I'm feeling good. I have been, I was just reminded by tonight's guest that I have been kind of wading through adversity and feeling it and recognizing it as adversity, but smiling, coming out on the other side being like, that was adversity. That was it. Like, I mean, and not that I'm wishing anything major to happen or anything like that, but like, I just feel like my ability to respond to things has really evolved. And I guess when you start to feel in connection with everything, you start to, everything comes into perspective. And that's where I'm at. Things have been really crazy at work. I think at Tied In Studios, I'm wearing that shirt tonight. You guys have been with me over the last couple of years through the journey. It was amazing when I got there. It got a little tough when we kind of lost some direction, and now we found some great direction. I've got a great new chief marketing officer in place, Alex Katagianidis. Shout out to you. Some amazing stuff happened in the studio today with two past guests of the show, Jordan Cabral Martin and Rich L. They were both on a podcast that we're producing at the studio, and it was great to see them. I don't know if you guys remember them, but it's awesome. The live stream of consciousness is kind of this thing that is organic. So I always forget to do this. I'm going to do this now, and then I'm going to introduce my guest, and that is just talk about growing the community. If you are watching this and you're feeling good, if you're feeling like you are me and I am you, because that's how I always feel, you're here for a reason, and you should comment in the comments. Tell me what you think of what silliness I just said. Subscribe, come back, hang out. I have 333 subscribers, Hat Powser says. That is significant in some way, in many ways, in not many ways, in 333 ways. That's awesome. It's funny that you say that, because Jesse, who has been staying with me, was just talking about that. He had some problems with his computer at exactly 3:33, and he was putting together this thing that was a 3 and a 3 and a 3. So I'm going to tell him that you said that. That is great. Anyway, so I'm rambling, which I usually do about this far into the show. Although my guest disappeared from the green room, I'm sure he's going to come back. I do want to talk about him. So StreamYard, which is this platform that we're on right now, it's kind of like Zoom a little bit, in that, people can connect pretty easily to a link. I can bring them on. I can create a background. I can run a video at the beginning, and I can produce a show and make it look like a real show. And that's kind of what I do, and that's what I'm going to be talking about on May 21st, and we'll get to that. But through this platform, there was a a link that popped up one day that said find guests, and I clicked on it and it brought me to this thing that was called Collab. And so StreamYard has this collab platform where you put a little profile of yourself if you want to be a guest on a show, or you put a profile of your show if you want to get guests, and you collaborate with people. And one of the first people I met was my guest tonight. His name is George Moody. He's been on the show before. We're going to talk about psychedelics and all sorts of cool things. So I am going to welcome him to the show and say welcome to the show, returning champion. He blacked out again there. I think hopefully he's still there. He's having some issues. He's coming from his car on his phone. Can you hear me, George?
I can. It seems like I'm kind of cutting out a little bit here and there, so I tried to change the level at which I'm streaming. So, but I can hear you loud and clear. Is my sound coming in okay?
You are. I can hear you. Excellent. My OCD self is telling me to tell you to rotate your phone, because earlier we were talking and it was nice and horizontal. And yeah, there's your big beautiful face.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. So George Moody, and it's funny because I kept saying George Moody, and I think I even might have put that on the on the promo. And I realized that when you signed on, George, we met on this amazing application that we're talking on right now that has connected the world and allowed people to have a voice, people who never really had a voice like this. I mean, I know for sure I never thought I'd be doing this stuff, but it feels so good to have a voice. It feels so good to be able to connect to people like yourself who you're in Hawaii, which I love, one of my favorite places on the planet, and do this stuff. So welcome back. I don't know if you watch Alex Ferrari, but he always says, welcome back, returning champion. And so you are definitely a returning champion. So I'm going to change up the format of this show very soon. I haven't changed it up yet. And so my question is still relevant because you're never standing in the same river twice. So what's your perspective these days? What is consciousness?
Man. Well, first off, thank you for having me back. I think you're an amazing individual. I think you have amongst the best audiences out of all the podcasts I've been on. And I'm really thankful to be here, man. I dig your style. I think you're a true artist. And yeah, you're right. We never stand in the same river twice. And it seems to me that consciousness is sort of like streaming. You know, in some ways, when you're doing this show, you're streaming your consciousness. So you're seeing the world in a different way. And I think we're on the cusp of gargantuan changes. You know, I think that the eclipse that we had was kind of like 2012. Like, you may not feel exactly this end of the world, but I think a major shift happened. And whether it's that timeline shift we talk about, or whether it's this new earth, or I think it's a change in the way we relate to each other. And I think you're going to see it continue to accelerate, man.
I agree, man. I feel like I heard it put an interesting way. In the spiritual communities, they talk about the shift that's happening in humanity and in consciousness, and they talk a lot about dimensions, right? So they talk about we're in the 3-dimensional world right now and shifting to the 5-dimensional world, and that made sense to me, right? That resonated, and in some ways, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I'm cool with that. I don't know quite what it means or what it looks like, right? But it makes sense. And somebody put it this way, I forget what it was, a video or something I was watching, that it's not like necessarily a physical change in physicality, but it's more of a perceptual change. So our perceptions are going to change, and we'll be able to perceive the 5th dimension, whereas now our perception is kind of limited to the 3 dimensions, or even 4 dimensions if time is considered one of those dimensions. But to perceive a 5th dimension would certainly feel like a different place, right? Even if it's not physically a different place, you would feel like you're in a different place. It seems like to me. That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, without a doubt. I see it in myself, and I guarantee you other people can see it and feel it if they just take time to concentrate on stuff. And what I mean by that is, I think that your sight is seeing more things. I think your sense of touch is able to feel more things. Your sense of hearing is able to hear more things. But more than that, it's sort of like a symphony. the same way that the spoken word is able to arouse all the senses in individuals versus the written word, so too is there a confluence of senses in each one of us that's happening. And that, in my opinion, is what's leading to this next perceptual jump, this next dimension of language, this next dimension of understanding, and this next dimension of your life. It's slow at first and then all at once. But if you look back to where you were, maybe for me, I was a truck driver less than a year ago. All of a sudden, much like you know, I'm a podcaster. Like I'm meeting some of the most coolest people in the world. And you know, it's not just me, it's all your guests. It's everybody right now that's willing to take a chance. If you're willing to become the best person in your life, if you're willing to be honest with yourself, the changes that can happen in your life starting today are mind-blowing. And I say that from experience. Like I'm a truck driver, man, and all of a sudden my life has been completely changed in the last year. It's magnificent, man.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love, you know, I've always told you this from day one, your energy is off the charts. The way that I receive you is so amazing. It's so loving. It's so excited about yourself and about life and about like the possibilities that exist, right? I mean, it's really an incredible thing. And I know you do your podcast. I want to talk about the TrueLife Podcast. And I know you are I put it as a psychonaut, like you are, you know, kind of an explorer of the psychedelics and how they affect the psyche and how they affect the humanity and the spiritual experience. I want to talk about all of that. So much so that I forgot what I started to say with that sentence. And you know how that often happens. But remind me what you just said. You just said something that was triggering it, I guess. Oh, okay. So it's about your excitement and about your perception of these endless possibilities and more so, I think what I'm hearing and receiving is this total belief in yourself, right? And this almost like this whole awareness and acceptance of yourself, right? In a way that I don't think society is built to allow us to do.
Yeah. You know, there's something out there that I would like everybody to take a moment to, if you're interested in how to live in a way that has been beneficial to me, and I think other people, in a way to kind of tap into limitless energy and different ideas and see the world different. There's this science called biosemiotics. And it's basically, biosemiotics is the language in which nature talks to us. And I believe, and I've begun to believe more and more and more in my life, that nature is constantly whispering to us through our dreams, whispering to us through a clear moment when you're alone on the patio, a nature walk. And what I mean by that is, you know, the other day I was outside checking out some plants in my garden, and I noticed like all these ants on there. And I'm like, what the heck are these ants doing on there? But as you watch the ants, like they crawl up the stem of it, and then they are kind of sucking out some of the nutrients from the leaves, you know, and I realized, look at this system right here. Here's these animals, these little parts of a conglomerate that are coming up and they're farming the nutrients out of this pristine plant. And I realized that's kind of what's been happening in our society. Like there's this level of decay in the form of like governments or laws or, you know, this thing that is trying to bring down nature on some level. But it doesn't have to be that way. I you know, there are ways in which, and when I saw that, it made me realize that there's things in my life that are eating me the same way the ants are eating the plants. And I can change that. Like if I'm aware of these things that are eating me, unlike a plant, I can get up and move to a new location. Unlike a plant, I can brush those things off of me, or I can try to figure out a way in which to, you know, what the hell are these ants doing on me? What are they doing on the plant? But that's just one small example of biosemiotics. It's this idea of looking at nature in a way that pertains to you, because I don't think you come into this world. I think you come out of it. We are part of nature. And the earth grows trees like an apple tree grows apples. And so if you begin seeing the world like that, it'll change your perspective. And I would like to welcome everyone to try and do it that way. I think it's fascinating.
I love that, and I love that you can actually boil that down to a tagline almost, and that's brilliant. We don't come into this world; we come out of it, and I just think that's a brilliant way to easily adjust your perception, you know what I mean, and try to understand where you're coming from. I think that's brilliant. And I'm just curious because you're saying this new word that I haven't heard called biosemiotics. Are you talking about, is it CYMA? You're talking about cymatics, biocymatics, or is that something completely different?
It's SEMIOTICS, semiotics. If you check it out, there's semiotics and there's biosemiotics. But if you could pull it up right now, you could read the definition for people.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm interested in the field of semiotics and biology studies, pre-linguist, meaning making biological interpreting process productive side. Okay, yeah. I see that, which is very interesting. Okay, so wow, very, very interesting because I have been recently, and I talked about this biosymbiotics. Hat Pauser saying biosymbiotics. This says biosemiotics. There's all of these different words, but they're and they're defined slightly differently. But they're, again, this is so interesting to me because of the way I see everything as everything is the same, right? Everything is this one thing.
Right.
And Hat Pauser's agreeing. That's a great tagline. You should copyright that. But anyway, so getting back to what I'm saying, and this is something that I've shared recently on this show, is there's this guy who's doing some experiments, and I've come to understand recently that there's a bunch of people doing this. This study of cymatics, which you've heard of, I'm sure, right? And in the study of cymatics, there's also this kind of art form in capturing those patterns that are made, you know, in the water when the frequency is played through it. So the guy that I'm talking about, I'm going to just share my screen here. I don't know how
please.
this is gonna work. His name is David Shiremeyer, and let's see if I can make this a little bigger. There's a little bigger. Can I just get the? You know what? I'm going to just put the photo in there like that. Yeah, there we go. Nice. So he's creating these images, and this is just one of like an infinite amount of possible configurations that he's presenting, and to me there are so many layers in this, and this is literally, as I look at this, I feel information in my brain moving around and like trying to understand and trying to almost communicate with this thing. And these particular images that he's creating and presenting and that I'm now seeing, I feel like are actually experiencing me. There's a weird feeling I get. There's a weird feeling I get when looking at these images that there's this interaction happening. It's not just me viewing the image, right? It's like frequency, right? Like, even though this is a capture of a moment of frequency in a still image, right? It's still transmitting to me visually, right? And I'm still receiving it. So there's this, I don't know, there's this interaction that's happening that is just freaking me out on some level. And I don't do psychedelics the way that you do. But what do you think about that? What do you think of the idea of frequency on that level? I mean, is that representative to you of, what is that representative to you of? I guess I don't want to lead you in the questions. I feel like I'm leading you.
No, not at all. I think it's beautiful. What would it mean about relationships if you took a moment to realize the thing you're experiencing is experiencing you? Like, there is communication there. It's just that we have, you know, when you look at the way we're educated, it's more like we're not educated, we're indoctrinated. You know, you leave your parents at an early age and you go to an institution where you're put in front of a authoritarian figure and you're taught that, you know, this is the color blue, this is the number 5, but you're not really given the amount of time or the freedom to explore meaningful concepts for yourself. You're taught these things from other people, and we know why that happens. There needs to be shared sacrifice, there needs to be shared goals so a community can work together. But at some point in time, you know, the level of information becomes stale. There's no new sort of people that are probing the ideas of what are possible, and we're living on old ideas. So yes, when you look at that image is indeed exploring you. That tree you're looking at, that tree is experiencing you, like the world around you. And I think that's what this fifth dimension is about. It's about understanding different dimensions of relationships. And that's about language too. Like, why can't an object, or why can't something that we, like the panpsychists believe that the trees, the rocks, they all have souls in them. And if you just, I know to some people that may sound corny or whatever, but if you just entertain that for a little bit, like, who are you to say that tree, like that tree's been here 10 times longer than you? It probably knows 10 times more than you. You know, like the when you start looking at some of like the Hopi traditions or some of the Cherokee traditions, or, you know, any of the indigenous traditions, they have this idea that the plants and the animals here, like, we're the younger brothers. Like, we're the new people. Like, they are sacred. They know more than us. They've been around longer. And I don't know. I think when you read literature or you go on a nature walk, you begin to realize things that you would never learn in a city or a classroom. And
right. Well, you know what? It's interesting what you're saying. I don't know if it's necessarily like an age thing, right? Because time, what is time anyway, right?
Right.
They've been around longer, but if you think about it, animals and plants are definitely so much more connected to the earth, right? And so much more connected to source than we are. We, through our rules and our society, we've actually separated ourselves from those things. You know what I mean? We've kind of, you know, we think we're all sophisticated and we've created all of this sophistication, but we've actually separated ourselves from needing to connect to the earth and understand the earth on those levels of just surviving it, right? Which animals and plants, they have innately, and they're still connected to that aspect of themselves, you know. It's interesting to think about this stuff. I love these conversations, man. This is
you know what I'm thinking too, Michael, is that what if that thing that you see in that image, or that thing you see in an animal, is a part of you that you recognize in it? You know what I mean by that? Because like, we're all built up of some of the same things. If it's true that you don't come into this world, you come out of it. What if that thing that you're drawn to is something that matches something on the inside of you? Like, maybe that's what the law of attraction is. Maybe that's why we have these weird affinities to things, is because that thing that we're attracted to is attracted to us.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. 1,000,000%. Totally brilliant. And Hat, I'm so glad Hat Pauser has become part of my audience. She's so knowledgeable about things. And she says Martin Buber wrote a book called I and Thou in 1923 about this. She said that when we were talking about rocks having a soul and consciousness and awareness. And it's funny that you even talk about that, because I can remember hearing that concept when I was really young and being like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. And just, you know, just knowing, right?
Yeah.
But not knowing why I knew, and it made sense. And then as I got older, I was like, wait a second, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But now these days, like everything we just talked about, it's like, you know, I think I can't wait till the time where my awareness of that concept lets me even experience it on a higher level than just like thinking about it, right? It's like there's got to be another level past thinking about it to experience it and actually just like almost like I'm imagining looking at a tree and just, you know, hearing it being like, hey Joe, hey Bob, you know, like just like, you know, like relating to it as the same way we would relate to each other, you know. That's really interesting. Hat is expanding upon her comment. Buber's main proposition is that we may address existence in two ways. One, the attitude of the I towards an object that is separate in itself, we either use or experience, or the attitude of the I towards thou in a relationship with the other is not separated by discrete bounds. And you know, that makes sense to me. I know you understand that. You know, and I love the fact that we're having, like I said before, we're having these conversations, because I feel like I don't get to talk about this stuff, you know, at my job and stuff, even though, you know, everyone at my job is cool and stuff. Like, you know, you don't hear this kind of stuff in the supermarket, you know, people aren't talking about this kind of stuff. They're just kind of doing the program, you know. And I also love the way you're talking, George, because I feel like and I've been mentioning this recently too, like there's a relationship between critical thinking and conspiracy theories and spirituality, right? But the way that you're talking
Yeah.
about it is not like fearful or angry, at whatever forces might be doing this, right? I mean, it's kind of like, and I think I'm at that place too in a different way, in that I feel like there's got to be good and evil in order to have a whole, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just happy I'm on the good side, and I'm going to stay there, and I'm going to try to attract good and avoid evil, but almost like respect it and let it be, because it needs to be, right? And just, that's it. And I think that's what makes it easier, like I was talking about earlier before I brought you on, about adversity, right? Experiencing adversity and being like, oh, I could do this. That's silly, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
stupid to get upset about something, or like I see a lot of people, going through life fighting about stuff with each other, or struggling with things. And I'm not saying my life is perfect and I don't feel those emotions, but being able to cope with them has become so much easier, and just be like, oh, okay, I got this, I'm alive, I'm breathing. When people say that, it's like, it sounds so silly, like, oh, just be grateful that you woke up and you're breathing. But at this point, it makes so much sense. It's just like, of course, and now I woke up and I'm breathing, and I had planned this, and look at what I did with my day. I'm here talking to
Right.
you. I'm here talking to you in this moment. I went through my day. I knew this was going to happen. I planned this moment, which is a great part of life too, right? You can have these intentions. You can do these things. I'm starting to blabber. Tell me about two things. Let's start with the TrueLife Podcast. What even is that?
Well, first off, I'll tell you all about it, but I want to touch on some of the things that you were saying about life is hard, and adversity and dimensionality. I want to try to tie these together for a moment. For those listening, and for most people, I want you to think about like an optical illusion. There's this optical illusion that I saw as a kid that's like, it's an old woman and a young woman at the same time. And it's very difficult to see them both. Like, the young woman has a hat with a feather, and then like the older woman has like a big nose or something like that. And there's this image, and sometimes most people just see one, but if you focus long enough, you can oscillate between the old woman and the young woman and see both. And you go, oh, this is an image of both an old woman and a young woman. And I think that the truth is, yeah, there you go. So, the truth is, this image represents the new dimensionality.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Oh, you dropped out, George. I love that you just brought that up. And I love that technology is...
It's both. So that travesty that's happened to you in your life is also a blessing. It's the old woman and it's the young woman. And you could spend some time being like, geez, Louis, why did this happen to me? And you can stay there. But you can also oscillate and be like, this is the best opportunity of my life. Because this happened, I'm going to love more than I ever have before. Because this happened, I'm going to be the best person ever. Like, the lower you go, the higher the character arc in the hero's journey, right? And like, that's the story that's imprinted on all of us. So I think that this represents that new dimension of like, yes, and I wish people could harness that, because you're the old woman and the young woman at the same time, man. I think that's where we're going.
I love, dude, amazing. And I was just, you dropped out for just a second, and I was just saying, as you dropped out, I'm so blessed that I live in this place. I'm having a conversation with you. I'm sharing it with an audience, and I can go to the internet while we're doing it, and I can call up that image, and there it is. And it just made so much sense, like what you were saying, like how that represents that shift in perception. I mean, perfectly. It absolutely. It's like, you've just got to allow yourself to be like, oh yeah, look, it is that. Oh yeah, and it is that too. And not like, no, it's just that. You know what I mean? And that's where what's happening on one side, and on the other side are, people like yourself and people who are, open to newer perceptions and like, wait a second, it's much better that I can see two different things and not have to choose one and be like, yeah, these are both great, Yeah.
And
Sure.
think about like all the language right now. Like there's like a big everything's like we're in a transition. There's these trans people. There's like all this trans out there. Doesn't that mean that maybe we're in a transformation? Like if we're using that sort of prefix in our language, well, doesn't language represent that which is happening in our world right now? Like the language is changing. Words that were nouns are becoming verbs. You know, and what does it mean when Michael Zen is a verb? Well, it means Michael Zen's in transition. You're no longer a person, place, or a thing that's stagnant. Now you're an individual in a process. And so I would challenge people when they think about the old way we did language with like nouns, think of nouns becoming verbs and think about how that changes the dimensions with which you see the world. Like everything is a verb. There's no more nouns. They're all verbs. And if you can see that, then you can see the old woman and the young woman. And you can help other people see that. And when you help someone else see both sides of that coin, man, something happens inside of you. And then you can see it more in yourself. It's like this positive feedback loop. And, you know, I know I'm kind of ranting a little bit, but it reminds me of this. Have you heard?
Oh, George, I don't know if you dropped out for everybody, but you dropped out for me. Hold on. Hopefully you'll come back. I know you're still talking. I don't know what you guys think, but I'm loving George. Yeah, you dropped out for a second. You dropped out again.
Okay, so I left off on the 100 monkey effect. So there was this documented team of researchers that went to like these remote islands in Japan. And most people probably know the story, but I'll tell it again because it's fascinating. And this island chain had like 20 different islands that were, 40 miles apart. And they went to this first island and they checked out the monkeys there. And their goal was to see how are these same exact tribes of monkeys living different on these islands, that are spread out over 20, 30, 40 miles apart. And so they go there to the first island and they make their notes. They study them for a week. And they go to the second island and they make their way to like the 25th island. And on the 25th island, they see something that they've never seen before. They see this monkey that finds a shell and he goes way out to the back and he uses this rock to crack open the shell and eat the muscle that's inside of there. And they're like, hey, that's the first time we've seen it on this island. We should, let's definitely mark that down and we'll document it. And by the time they make it out to the next island, every single monkey on that island is taking rocks and banging that shell. They go back to the first island on their trip back, and all the monkeys on every island are using rocks to open up the shells. And they're like, what did we just witness? Well, it seems what they've witnessed is this way in which consciousness, when one of us learns, when one of us wins, one of us, ladies and gentlemen, when one of us wins, we all win. We all learn this thing. Like we're all elevated on this level. Yeah. And it's like, it's almost like the same way the seeds of the dandelion blow on the wind and they gravitate towards you. So too do the discoveries on earth, man. Like when somebody, it's the same thing with the guy that broke like the 4-minute mile. They've said no one will ever break the 4-minute mile, but as soon as he did, other people broke it. Yep. So we're connected on that level. And I think
I just heard that story recently. Man, right? That's so totally, man. And it's just so funny. I just heard that story very recently. Somebody told that exact story and just about humanity and about our thoughts and limiting beliefs and those kinds of things, and it's so true. And it's so, man, it's so exciting to see it happening, to see, to see it happening in modern people who are finding ways to change their belief systems and change their lives, like you're talking about. Yeah. And even like Brian Lahr, who's a friend of mine who I do a show with, is like a wizard. He's like old school magic, old tarot cards, and like a book he made himself of his whole life of like just really, really amazing stuff. But like undeniable, right? It's just undeniable, the power of it. And it's just I'm so excited because I know for me, yes, it's absolutely happening. This show is an example of it, right? I never thought I would be on my own show, and now I have my own show. I've been doing it for over 2 years. I've spoken to Tommy Chong and Flat Earth Dave and George Monty. You know what I mean? It's just it's brought me so much joy and so much connection. Like you said, you get to do things that really turn you on, and it was all of your doing, right? Like it's amazing to think, and I'm so grateful for it,
And you're good at it, man. You're really
Oh,
good
thank
at
you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. And I appreciate my audience for always being there. They're very, very supportive. I love you guys so much. But there's so much more to talk about. So I don't want to get stuck because I want to talk about psychedelics. That's
me too.
like, my background is all inspired by psychedelics and like a lot of the artwork that I've been doing and understanding even what a visionary artist is. Like I didn't even know what that was until recently, and that's somebody who has tapped into some psychedelic visions and puts them down on paper or whatever medium they work in. Like Alex Gray is like a visionary artist, and somebody who I've had on the show, Bo and Bromwell, is amazing artists. But what's really cool is, I think, and so fascinating to me about the study of psychedelics is the commonality between these experiences that people have and the indication that it's linked to something bigger than just, a cool, fun chemical experience. So why don't you talk about psychedelics, what they are and how you got into it?
All right. So, I've always been, much like a lot of your listening audience, someone who's fascinated by weird things, by living on the edge a little bit and trying to make sense of mysteries, and, a lover of catching butterflies and chasing lizards and being out in nature. And I love the ineffable. I love finding something that's indescribable and be like, look at this thing, and as a kid, you see something and you're like, look at this magical thing over here. And then someone comes over and they're like, oh, that's a blue belly lizard. And you're like, oh man, are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure it was just a dragon from this mythical land that I made up, man. And so like, that's kind of always stayed with me. And I remember one of the first times, I think it might've been the first time I did mushrooms, and I was in high school. Me and my buddy went to the Laser Pink Floyd show, and we split like, it was so epic, man. We were rolling in our Volkswagen bus. We ran over an Abba Zaba, and I thought we got a flat tire because like, do. We're kind of tripping out a little bit, and I got out of my van, and I'm like, I got a flat tire. And then it was just an Abba Zaba. It was stuck on my tire. But the best part.
Oh, we lost you again. All right. Well, we lost George for a moment, but he is he will be back. Oh, you're back. Okay, we lost you. All right. So we last you got a flat tire in the van.
I got a flat tire in the van, and I get out to check it out. Because the van was like dum dum dum, and I get out, and it turns out it was just an Abba Zaba that was stuck to the tire. So,
what is that? What is that even? I don't even know what that is.
You don't know what an Abba Zaba is?
No.
This is how old I am. Okay, for those who don't know, an Abba Zaba is a delicious white chocolate candy bar that has peanut butter on the inside. I don't even know if they make them anymore, but it's delicious. But it's super sticky.
So it was stuck to the tire and making noise.
It was. But here's the best part that I really remember about that trip too is, and for people that may not know, on mushrooms specifically, there's this period of integration at the end where you get really philosophical. You start asking these questions and you start getting these feelings. And I remember for the first time in my life, I got this sense of warm certainty that everything had a purpose. And in that, I had a purpose. And it was the very first time in my life, and I can still remember today, that it made sense. And like that to me was like a moth to a flame. From that point forward, I found myself going back to psychedelics and searching for that feeling of knowing. And the more that I did it, I like to think about it as a light. Like the closer you get to that light, the more it shines on the secrets around you. And even though it shows more darkness, right? If you have a flashlight, it also exposes more darkness, but that light will allow you to see the path forward. And psychedelics has always been that for me on some level. And I know they're not for everybody, but I highly recommend those that are curious to think about that saying, that which you are seeking is seeking you. And they're a great way to explore yourself, your mind, to ask questions, to figure things out. And I've been speaking to lots of people on my podcast about it. And here's another really cool thing that I want to share with people that I figured out recently after a really high dose psychedelic trip. I think the last dose I took was about 8 grams, and I had this incredible idea. At least I thought it was incredible. We can see what your audience thinks. So there's a lot of talk about psychedelics and neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your brain changing its shape in order for you to see the world differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the negative things about psychedelics is people talking about having a bad trip. Some people freak out a little bit and they get all crazy. And this trip that I had, I think I learned what that was. When people have a bad trip, when they're really freaking out, that is the manifestation of neuroplasticity happening in real time. So that's why, I'm pretty sure, at least in my mind, that makes 100% sense. If you think about people, and all of us have some.
Oh, we lost you again, George. If you think about people, he was saying, if you think about people, we'll remind him.
We have these. I'm back.
You were popping in and out. We lost you at, if you think about people, you said.
Okay. So if you think about people on psychedelics, there is the idea of the bad trip, right?
Right.
And all of us have, the bad trip comes from feelings and ideas that we have locked away.
Mm-hmm.
Whether maybe you were molested as a kid. I was molested as a kid,
mm-hmm.
Or maybe someone in your life died, or someone you loved died, or maybe you were really mean to someone you loved.
Some trauma.
Okay. Yeah. So all these traumas, the brain sometimes as a coping mechanism will stop you from thinking about, right? We use all these coping mechanisms to not talk about it, to put it away. And I think on these high dose psychedelic trips, people that have bad trips, that is the brain finding a way to access that memory, forcing you to see it, forcing you to integrate it. And that's why people are freaking out. There's no escaping it. Like if you have, that's why they talk about set and setting being such a powerful thing. And if you're not ready and you've done some things in your life you're not proud of, like all of us have, you take that high dose, mushrooms will show them to you and you may not like it. And that's why you freak out. But okay, but now we're back to the idea of seeing the old lady and the young lady. The old lady, the bad thing about that is you might freak out and run down the street naked. Or you might sit down on the couch and start crying and be like, I'm so sorry I did that. But either way, when you're done with that, you now have a new way to integrate it. It's taking that memory, it's taking that PTSD, putting it right in your face and forcing you to make a decision about it. It's 5 years of therapy in 5 hours. And if you know what you're doing, you can really get through some tough stuff, man.
Yeah, amazing, dude. I've heard some incredible stories of people, different modalities, I guess, like ayahuasca, as well as mushrooms and stuff, but stories of realization, right? Like where for example, a friend of mine was presented with his parents had him when they were very young, and they ended up kind of giving him to the grandmother, and he grew up being raised by this grandmother and all this stuff. And so he just had this relationship with his parents and this stuff throughout his whole life that and kind of like this, this feeling of angst and anger. But then he was shown his parents, having him at like 19 years old and being like, we don't know anything. We don't know what we're doing. And he suddenly had compassion and he realized, oh my God, they did the best they could. Like, and stories like that are always so like happy for me. It's like happy endings, like seeing the trauma and actually having to face it, is just really incredible. I just want to catch up here because my audience is great and I've been so excited about the conversation. I have been kind of not doing it, but where did I see some comments I wanted to address here? I've heard it. So you were talking about nouns becoming verbs, and Hat said, I've heard it said that God is a verb. Not sure who said it first, but source the is, which of course is the basic be verb. Which is awesome. I love that. And Tim Lorenz, who is a fan of this show, also listens to the TrueLife podcast since you first were on here. And he said he thinks you know him, so he's. I do.
I gotta send him some mushrooms.
That's great. That's awesome. We got to talk about that too, because I want to come to Hawaii and I want want to have a nice trip with you, man.
I love
It
that.
just seems like it would be so cool. But Hat was talking about a rising tide. We were talking about everybody. You said everybody wins. A rising tide lifts
Yeah.
all ships.
Yeah.
Consciousness is fluid and without boundary. Flocks of birds and school of fish prove it every day. I
Love it.
love witnessing that stuff and just
Yeah.
wondering like what's going on in all of those minds at once.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. And Tim says nothing is impossible because it only takes time and determination to make it reality, and thoughts and action. It takes that too. But again, that stuff is so powerful. Words and thoughts and determination and intention. And I see Janice out there just giving a thumbs up. I want to say hello. But yeah, man, so exciting to talk about all this stuff. I love it. And it's I want to get back to psychedelics, but what I'm enjoying so much, like I said, is the idea that, there are things that are happening that are possibly they are possibilities, that there are intentions to pull us away from some of the power that we have, some of our connection to the earth and connection to our own consciousness and the powers that gives us, because then whatever forces might be doing that are not going to be in control, right? And what's interesting too is, even looking at the things, the David Scheinmeyer things about frequency, to even understand like, wow, these conspiracy theories about using sound to control us and things like that, like it just starts to make so much sense. And you're just like, oh, I wonder what is going on. But again, what I love is the idea that none of that really matters, because we are love, and if we do focus on that stuff becomes our reality. But if we focus on love and what we can give to each other and how we can treat each other and make each other feel in a good way, then that becomes our reality. And that's so awesome, just having that power. And that's where that shift and that split comes, right? So where they say back to that whole idea of 3-dimension, 5-dimension, where they say the people who are holding on to their old beliefs will go stay in the 3rd dimension. It's just they won't have the same perceptions, and they'll just be stuck there. But it won't matter to us, because we'll be like, oh, we can see you there, we're just not hanging out there. And you you froze again for a second, but you are back. So let's get back to psychedelics. So I don't know if we talked about ayahuasca much. I know mushrooms is kind of like your favorite, and your modality. Let's call it that. But have you done ayahuasca? Have you had an ayahuasca experience?
So I grow ayahuasca at my house, and ayahuasca is a combination of 2 plants, and there's different methods of which you can do it. Different curanderos have different recipes, and for me, I didn't feel like I should be able to do ayahuasca unless I can make ayahuasca. And so I bought 2 different plants, and then I raised them. One is the vine, which is mine is black vine, and then that has one element in there, and then the other plant that I bought is called Psychotropia viridis, and that has the DMT in there.
Okay.
And so I've tried to make it twice, and I've successfully thrown up twice, but I've never tripped off of it, so I'm not there yet. And I feel like maybe the 3rd time's a charm. And, I've been invited to go to places and do it, but I just feel like my relationship with ayahuasca should be something that the first time is like a first date. And I feel like I want to, bring up the right offering and show the right sort of respect by figuring out a way to brew it myself. And so I never have done it before, but I have a relationship with it, where I'm learning.
That's wonderful. That's real. That's the first time I've ever heard that approach. That's amazing. So even more of a reason to start planning a trip to come out there and talk about things with you and hang out and experience things with you. I love that. So you haven't experienced it. I've heard so many amazing things about it. And I've seen people who really, have changed in a lot of amazing ways. I see people who have YouTube channels who have done it like so many times. So do you feel like I don't know what the laws are concerning it over where you are, as far as like offering experiences to people. Is that still not legal?
Yeah, I think it's all illegal. I think
It's,
that there's definitely places that can do it under a certain sort of indigenous exemption. But for the most part, it's sort of a gray area, I think. Much like many of the substances, if you are responsible and at home and you've got things figured out, I don't really see it being a big deal. But if you try to commercialize it,
right.
I think that you're going to have people knocking on your door.
Sure. And so then just kind of on a friendly basis, have you felt like called to lead people through, kind of, if they feel like they're called to it, and they say, "Hey George, help me out here." Have you led anyone through the experience?
I've spoken to people about their trips, but I've never been a guide.
Okay.
I don't I feel like I know a lot about it, but my honest opinion is that if it was a family member or someone that really had trauma, I would sit down with them and totally trip sit for them and help them in any way I can. But I think it's such a personal experience. And I think maybe the first time people do it, they should do it with a friend on a small dose. And if you do it recreational, that's cool, whatever. But if you really trying to work on some problems, I think you should be alone and take a dose that you're comfortable with. It's like being on a trail, right? Like if you're going to go out hiking, and you go do a small trail first and figure it out, bring a backpack. And after you've done it for a while, then you can hike out for a day or hike out for a week, but you have to work up to it. You have to be comfortable with the environment. And
Interesting.
I'm not sure that you really need anybody to tell you what your problem is. I think you as an individual know what your problem is, and you don't want to fix it. You're running from it. And I think that this is a way for you as an individual to fix your problem. Stop letting other people tell you what your problem is. Don't let them label you. Figure it out. And that's when you will come to the answer, because only you know what it is. Only you can solve it. So why would you let anybody else tell you what it is? You should be leery of people that want to sit down with you. Like, hey, I'm going to help you through psychedelics. Like, don't go to that person. Stay away from that person.
Interesting. No, that's a totally interesting take on it, and I feel that 1,000,000% with everything you said. I feel like it is personal, and if that is the intention, right? Like you're like there's a part of me that feels like, okay, I do have some trauma with my parents' divorce, right? But but looking back at my life, I did pretty well, right? I did okay and whatever, but there's whatever it is that's buried, I don't even know what the F it is, right? It's like maybe it's a specific experience, a specific day, maybe it's a feeling about the whole process. I don't know, but the idea of what you're saying, like for me to be like, you know what, I'm going to take these mushrooms because it's safe right now, because I know I'm not going through that. It's safe to face that right now. And if that can help me, imagine or envision anything that I need to bring me to that place and face it, and like you said, integrate it, reintegrate it in a new way, reintegrate that experience. That really sounds great. Excuse me, hold on.
It's interesting that you bring that up about divorce, because my parents got divorced.
Oh, we got to wait till you come back. My parents got divorced. That's the last thing George said. Remind me when he comes back that the last thing he said was his parents got
figure out what the hell happened.
Okay, George, we lost that. We lost you at my parents got divorced, and then you came back and said I was trying to figure out what the hell happened. So I don't think we missed too much, but
okay. So I'll take it from the top right here. I spent some pretty big trips, 6, 7 grams, 8 grams on mushrooms, trying to figure out my problems. And one of them stemmed from like my parents getting divorced. And what I realized is that my father, who was given up for adoption as a baby, on some level had the idea of abandonment imprinted on him, which equals I'm not good enough, which equals I'm going to do all these things, which equals I'm going to find a person in life and sabotage that relationship because I'm not good enough. And I realized like I have echoes of that in me, and it's not even mine. Like, why am I holding on to my dad being adopted? Like, and you can see it so clear when you're sometimes in these other states of awareness. Like, it's imprinted on you. The things that happen to your grandparents, those are imprinted on you. You may have had nothing to do with them, but you're running around like a wild woman or a wild man acting crazy because something happened to your parents or your grandparents. And when you figure that out, you can slow it down and then halt it. Be like, wait a minute, this is a pattern that everyone in my family's done, and I'm not going to do it anymore. And it helps to understand why they do that pattern. My dad did this because he was abandoned and he never felt good enough. And so that was transferred to me. So I am good enough. I'm not abandoned. I'm not going to sabotage my relationship, and it's, everybody can do this. Like, everybody can take time to reflect. If you're honest with yourself, it's painful. Like, why am I fucking this up? What is wrong with me? Like, I've asked myself that a lot. And if you're honest with yourself, you can find that answer and you can begin to change it, man. And the psychedelics can be a huge part of that. And and you don't need someone to tell you about it. Like, the answer. You're doing something wrong. Take this plant, think about it, and fix it, man. It's like, I like to think that especially mushrooms and some of these plants, they're like exogenous neurotransmitters, right? We have neurotransmitters in our brain. Sometimes our different parts of our brains get flooded with dopamine or norepinephrine, and these things leave a flashbulb memory that imprints on us. What happens when we take one of these neurotransmitters that grow outside of our brain and we put it inside of us, like DMT or psilocybin? Now we can fundamentally change those light bulb memories and put a blue light on it, put a yellow light on it, or turn that light off. But I think we need to begin thinking about these plants as different, as exogenous neurotransmitters. And I don't know, maybe that's the fifth dimension we're talking about.
Totally. Wow, crazy, incredible. I just caught a glimpse of the clock. I didn't even realize it was almost 10 o'clock already. Not that we have to stop. I could talk to you for hours, man. It's amazing to just be able to talk openly about this stuff, and I hope my audience is appreciating George's candidness. I think everybody probably is. What am I doing here? Hold on a second. Okay, I've got nothing new happening in the conference room. You've got them all mesmerized in the chat room. So I think definitely, I know, my partner has spoken recently about kind of feeling a little bit of a call to try mushrooms. She's never done that before. I know for myself, like, I feel like, again, the same thing. Like I say, when I look at my past, I'm like, no, I don't have any trauma. I feel pretty good. I've dealt with everything, but I do feel like I haven't reached my potential. I'm in my own growth. I'm realizing the certain things that I can address in that, and they work, right? Like just certain ideas about my thoughts and my intentions and things like that, and everything's manifesting the way it's supposed to. And again, even this show, I think this show is supposed to evolve into something different, right? To help me become more of whatever it is I'm supposed to be. So here we are. Thank you guys for being here as a part of that. Thank you, George, for being a part of that. I definitely want to talk again. Let's wrap this up for now. I'll put you in the green room and we'll talk after this. But before I put you in the green room, say something interesting to my audience, mesmerize them.
Well, first off, I just want to say thanks to everybody. I know as much as everybody in the audience that Michael Zen has one of the greatest podcasts out there. There's not enough people listening to it. And I think we could change the world. If everybody listened to CNN, listen to Michael Zen. Like, I think the world would be a better place. So thank you to the audience for allowing me some time with Michael. I really appreciate it. I love all the comments out there. If anybody gets a chance, just check out the TrueLife Podcast. I occasionally have some awesome people on there, and I would love to, if you want to check it out, man. And I just want to seriously say thank you to everybody. I apologize for dropping out here and there. Have a beautiful day. More Michael Zen. That's all I got. Thank you.
That's an amazing way to go. I'm going to put you in the green room. I'll see you in a minute. I'm going to take my customary breath in through the nose and release You know what's so cool about that? I gotta tell you guys, and I didn't do it this morning. I do that on the Angel channel with Brian Lahr. We do some clearing of the space. We do some breathing exercises. I can't iterate enough to you guys how equipped you are to deal with whatever it is at any moment. Simply breathing. It is the simplest effing thing. If you are getting worked up at work, something's bothering you, and you're just like, oh, you're feeling, take a minute, go into the bathroom if you have to, and just do this. Just breathe in through your nose as deeply as you can. Hold it for 2 seconds, and then breathe out. And do 3 of them, but notice on the first one how you already feel it, right? So I'm just going to do one. I'm already feeling it. I'm already feeling it. Like, it's just so simple. It's so damn simple. You do 3 of those and you're high. You're just, it's amazing. Anyway, let me check what I got on my calendar next week. If I've even got my schedule together. I don't know if I do. I don't have anybody on my schedule for next week. I've got to get somebody on my schedule for next week. Hat Powser, if you're out there, I would love for you to be on a guest. I know we've talked about it. You said you're not ready, but I think you're ready. I think you would be such an amazing guest. I really want to talk to you face to face. I love that you come to my show every week and comment and enlighten me with your knowledge. Tim Lorenz is volunteering, so maybe I'll have Tim Lorenz on the show. Tim is actually in the United States, I believe. I've been watching his pictures, and I think he's happily in the United States now and exploring with Sonia and Taryn. And Hat saying, oh, thanks. So I'm going to talk to Hat. Tim, you've been on the show. She hasn't. But if she doesn't want to come on, maybe she's saying do it, Tim. So I think she's still not feeling ready. Hat, you are more than ready to come on this show. I am telling you, you're more than ready to come on the show. Anyway, folks, I love you guys so much for being here. Thanks again for George for being here and saying such great things about me. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.